Bill O'Reilly acknowledges that there is a gulf between African Americans and the GOP, but he doesn't think it has to do with any distaste on the part of Republicans towards African Americans. No, he has an entirely different theory. Let's hear him tell it.
Well, you say that the Republican Party is apathetic. They don't really care.
Don't care.
Okay.
Maybe Rand Paul.
Maybe. That might be true. I mean, I think they're more intimidated, though, than uncaring. I think they're afraid.
By what?
I think they're afraid. I think they're afraid of black people.
Are black folks scared? Are they scary?
No. The white Republican power structure is afraid of black Americans. They don't know how to treat them. They don't know how to speak to them. They don't know anything about the culture, and they don't want to be called a racist bigot, so they stay away.
But why does that make you scared as opposed to being interested in understanding, embracing?
Because they feel it's not worth the trouble, the few votes they might siphon off, to get involved with it. That's how they feel. I know that for a fact.
So that is rough. The thing that pisses me off the most about, there's a lot of things that bother me about that. The thing that pisses me off the most is he says those things about that they're afraid, they don't understand, they don't know how to treat them, as if he's some passive observer over this, rather than one of the men who is most responsible for making them afraid of black people every day for the last 10 plus years. Every day he goes on his show and he talks about them being thugs and how they dress different and how you're totally justified to gun them down if they attack you. He makes white people afraid of black people and then stands back and says, oh, it's probably something they did. It's probably Bill Cosby's fault or something like that.
Wow, John, that's such a good point that it changes my mind a little bit. I was a little bit more mixed on that than you were, right? Look, I think that he's right that some Republicans are afraid of how to talk to African Americans. They fear that they're going to say something wrong and they're going to get called racist. I think that's totally real, right? And so they're afraid of engaging that. Of course, the much more relevant factor is they're afraid they might have to do something for African Americans. And I don't mean like the way Bill O'Reilly would paint it, give them welfare, give them handouts. No, like that they would have to say, okay, how do we get you equality of opportunity? What do we have to do? What should we spend more money on education? How should we reorient our priorities? Because they don't want to reorient their priorities. They want their priorities to go to oil subsidies and defense contractors and tax cuts for the rich and all the things. They have no interest in reaching out because they don't want to do those things. Now, but nonetheless, that doesn't mean that O'Reilly isn't right, that they're scared to talk to black people. They're scared how to talk to black people. But you make such a good point that I'm going to go instead of 50-50, 75-25 against them, because it is O'Reilly who's been saying to everybody, the thug culture. I mean, he says it over and over and over and again. And then he also says, the minute you say anything, they always call you racist. Okay, well, that's because you're saying racist stuff. If you weren't saying racist stuff, then we wouldn't call you that, right?
When Barack Obama made that famous speech about, it was after Trayvon Martin, and he talked about what it's like to be a black guy, even a senator. People lock their doors when he crosses the street. They clutch their purse when they're in an elevator with him. And then I watched Bill O'Reilly brought on Bernie Goldberg that following Monday to address those comments. And they said, of course, whites are afraid of blacks, that you guys commit most of the crimes. Of course, you're all criminals. And that's, I'm not paraphrasing. Yeah, right. This is what they said. This is literally what they said. They brought out the statistics. They go, look at all the murders are committed by blacks compared to whites, all the crimes. So they said, literally, that's why we're afraid. And that's exactly what you said. They're literally calling them all criminals, painting with a broad brush on black people. And, you know, when he says they're afraid to talk to blacks, it's because they're afraid to reveal themselves. Like, well, the first time it really happened was Ross Perot. Ross Perot went to speak to the NAACP and he said, you people. And he got in a lot of trouble when he referred to them as you people, right? And then we had Mitt Romney went to the NAACP, gave a speech, and they booed him. And I was like, really? You mean a billionaire born into privilege with a wife who teaches horses to dance didn't connect with the NAACP? And then we had Rick Santorum, who referred to African Americans as blah people. So yes, they do have a hard time talking to black people.
And so on the Mitt Romney thing, look, he doesn't get it. So if he made a real effort, instead of just doing some cosmetic speech at the NAACP, which then went on to, in some ways, insult the African American communities, saying, "Hey, I'm here to challenge you," it was partly to prove how tough he is. That's why he did the speech.
Yeah.
It wasn't. He didn't think he was going to get black votes when he's running against Barack Obama. He wanted to show conservatives, I can go to their house and insult them to their face in their house. So it was not the kind of reach out that you were really looking for. And then, Mitt Romney, when they asked him, like, how can people get a leg up? Because the thing that African Americans care most about, as with most Americans, is equality of opportunity. How can my kids do better, right? Yeah. All right, so I'm in a tough spot, but how can my kids do better, right? That's the core instinct of every parent. Mitt Romney says, oh, well, if you're looking to start a business, why don't you just borrow money from your parents? Yeah. Like you
20,
don't,
30,000.
like you don't. Yeah, it was. I think he said 20,000.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you just borrow $20,000 from your parents? Oh, okay. Oh, thanks, Mitt. I appreciate that. Right. But look, there is a way to genuinely do it, and then it's not like people are unreasonable. Like, so Tavis Smiley mentioned it too. Rand Paul. So Rand Paul said those things about civil rights era when he was on Rachel Maddow's show, and he said, well, I'm not sure that it's right to have small business owners be forced to change their ways. And so people got really mad because then you're talking about segregated diners from the past. He was having a theoretical libertarian conversation. Now, you want to get on him for that, I get it, right? But then after that, he went and actually reached out to African Americans. He went and talked to black groups, he went and talked to black universities, and he talked about, hey, how can we improve things? And one of the ways that we can improve things was, hey, if we stop the war on drugs, it'll liberate hundreds of thousands of black people, right?
Probably millions.
Right, and think about how important that is. Now, in the midst of that, I remember he busted his balls a couple of times because he said things while talking to black students that were obvious and yada yada. But I give him a pass on all that, and I think almost everybody doesn't look, so does Tavis Smiley, right? Look, in the moment, you're like, you probably shouldn't have phrased it that way, but at least you're making an effort, so God bless, you rank #1 for as far as, you go make that speech, you say 3 things that maybe you shouldn't have said. It's all water under the bridge as long as you're making a real effort. That makes you 1,000 times better than any other Republican.
Yeah, the thing that if you take Bill O'Reilly at his word, you believe that he believes what he's saying, it's pathetic. He tries to pretend as if blacks have overwhelmingly supported Democratic candidates, starting with the candidacy of Barack Obama, which is of course not the truth. 99 times out of 100, unfortunately, due to the way the political system works, the candidates that that African Americans vote for on the Democratic side are white Democrats. What, are we supposed to believe that when you put a D next to your name, you genetically now understand how to speak to African Americans? That has nothing to do with understanding, it has nothing to do with fear, it has to do with the policies and the lack of interest on the right in actually pursuing it, in pursuing a change in their policies. Right now, they will either try to trick black voters into voting for them or block them from voting at all if they have the opportunity.
Johnny Pye, those were 2 very good points. I just want to say he's really on fire today. He's got a bad throw, but God damn it, he's really throwing it down.
I'm trying. Thank you.
Look, I think the problem of racism also does go into culture to a large extent. I had breakfast this morning with a buddy of mine who's an actor out here, African-American guy. He's been at it for like 10, 15 years. You've seen him commercials and stuff.
Wesley Snipes?
Not Wesley Snipes. But, his problem is, he's like, dude, I'm auditioning for another role with a guy with a gun. Like, I'm tired of it. He's like, because, he's dark-skinned, he's not light-skinned, so it's like, oh no, criminal, criminal, criminal. And let me tell you, a lot of those casting directors aren't voting Republican. All right? And neither are the people running the show. And when the message you have your whole life is you're a criminal everywhere, that's what Hollywood tells you, it's what Jay-Z tells you, it's what every rapper tells you, be a thug, be hard. I mean, it's all bullshit. It's as much bullshit as punk rock is bullshit. Okay? It's a mark.
That's a lot of bullshit.
No, it's true. It's true. And it's the exact same thing. Like, look, if you want to go back to like the roots of gangster rap and everything else, and you go back to books that were written in the 1960s. Like, I think the one writer more responsible for gangster rap than anything else, the foundation of it, is a guy named Donald Goines. A couple of his books have been made into movies and stuff, but, when you read what he writes, and then you read who he really was, Dr. Dre was going to hire me to write a biopic on this guy, like about 10 years ago. So I read all his books, did all his research and everything, and you think, okay, this guy's a hard motherfucker. Except he wasn't a hard motherfucker. What he was a light-skinned black guy in Chicago whose parents owned a chain of dry cleaners. And he felt people made fun of him because he wasn't black enough. So he had to go fuck shit up hardcore. He became a heroin addict and everything else. And when you read his books, you see that self-hatred come through in every page.
Well, you know what is also hilarious to me, or ironic, is that, you know, people like Bill O'Reilly and what have you, they always talk about Michael Brown's a thug, and he was smoking pot, he's a thug, and the rappers, they glorify this thug culture, and it's in their culture, they glorify it. Where did I get that from? I don't know. I was just thinking about that the other night when I was watching Goodfellas, and I don't know where that stuff comes from. I mean, you know, maybe I thought he was the Godfather, but anyway, the thing is, where did they get that gangster shit from the streets of New York? The thing I was watching, I mean, it's such bullshit. Both cultures would fucking glorify criminals.
You
Both
glorify
cultures.
criminals.
Both cultures. And then, not only that, then we glorify war. And we go one step further, right? Okay.
Well, every war movie, even if it's an anti-war movie, is a pro-war movie.
Yes.
I mean, they just are. When I was in the service, everybody knew every line from Platoon and Full Metal Jacket. And you're like, wow, and you join the Army. You love those movies, because it's human beings, especially men, respond to violence. They just do.
Look, this is literally the oldest thing in American history. Billy the Kid, Bonnie and Clyde. You know, we love the gangsters. We love the outlaws. So it's the same thing that runs through gangster rap, and the same thing that runs through Scarface and Goodfellas and all those things. And by the way, in the movies, you're right, Wes. It happens in almost every context. Oliver Stone does Wall Street to say how terrible Wall Street is, and every kid who's ever been on Wall Street has watched Wall Street, loves it, and can't wait to be Gordon Gekko.